My brother's fiancée asked us to pay $3,000 and sign an NDA to attend their wedding, so I refused, then watched their dream day fall apart. I'm a 25-year-old guy named Michael, and a few weeks ago I got a save-the-date card in the mail for my brother Jake's wedding. He's 28, and I won't lie, I was happy for him. We've always been close, at least we were until he started dating Emily. I tried to get along with her, but something about her always felt off. She has this way of talking over people, making decisions for Jake, and generally acting like she's in charge of everything. I figured it was just her personality, but over time, it started to affect our family. Jake and I used to hang out all the time, but once he got serious with Emily, he became harder to reach. It was like she had a say in when and how he could see people. Even when we did meet up, she was either there or texting him constantly. My parents noticed it too, but they chalked it up to relationship stuff. So, when I heard they were engaged, I was happy for him, but I also had a sinking feeling that things were only going to get worse. Then the actual wedding invitation came, and that's when everything started going off the rails. First, it wasn't just an invitation, it was basically a contract. The wedding was going to be a destination event at a luxury resort in Italy. A beautiful place, sure, but the catch was that every guest had to pay their own way. And it wasn't just flights and hotels. They had a whole wedding experience package that cost over $3,000 per person. It included things like a welcome dinner, a spa day with the bridal party, mandatory for bridesmaids, a yacht excursion, and a private farewell brunch. And of course, attendance at all these events was required. I assumed it was a suggestion, but the wording was clear. If you didn't pay for the full experience, you weren't invited to the ceremony. I thought my parents would be just as shocked as I was, but they were surprisingly calm about it. My mom said it was a lot, but it was Jake's big day, and they wanted to be supportive. My dad just muttered something about how weddings are getting ridiculous these days, but even they weren't totally against it. Extended family, though? Different story. As soon as the invitations started going out, our family group chat blew up. Some cousins and aunts were already saying they wouldn't go because of the cost. Then I saw the part that made my jaw drop. The NDA. Buried in the invitation was a section that said all guests had to sign a non-disclosure agreement to attend. Apparently, Emily had gotten the idea from another influencer's wedding, a high-profile event where guests weren't allowed to post anything that wasn't pre-approved. She had convinced herself that their wedding needed the same level of exclusivity, even though no one attending was actually famous. The NDA specifically said guests weren't allowed to post anything online, discuss any issues about the wedding, or mention the costs at all. Violating the NDA, it warned, could result in legal action. At first, I thought this was a joke, but nope, it was real. Jake confirmed it when I asked him. He said it was just a precaution, and that Emily was really serious about protecting her brand. I asked if he was okay with this, and he just shrugged, saying it was what Emily wanted. The more I read the invite, the worse it got. Bridesmaids had to wear custom dresses from a specific designer, which they had to buy themselves, and the groomsmen had their own strict dress code. The itinerary was packed with pre-wedding events, and none of them were optional. The family group chat turned into a war zone. Some of my cousins flat out refused to go. My uncle called it the most entitled thing he'd ever seen. A few relatives were trying to keep the peace, but it was obvious that a lot of people were backing out. My parents weren't happy about the drama, but still wanted to go. My mom asked me to just sign the NDA and go for Jake's sake, but I couldn't get past how ridiculous it all was. It wasn't just about the money, it was the control, the way Emily was dictating every detail, even what people could say about the wedding. It was too much. I sat with it for a few days debating whether to go, but in the end I decided I couldn't do it. I called Jake and told him I wasn't coming. He didn't take it well. At first he just sounded disappointed. Then he asked if I could at least reconsider. I told him I loved him, but I wasn't comfortable with everything they were asking. He got quiet for a long time before finally saying, "Okay, if that's how you feel." But even as he said it, I could tell it wasn't over. He wasn't arguing yet, but I knew my brother, and I could hear the hesitation in his voice. An hour later, I got a text from Emily. It was long, passive-aggressive, and full of guilt-tripping. She said she was heartbroken that I was making this about myself instead of supporting my brother. She said it wasn't that hard to just sign a piece of paper and show up, then ended it with, "I hope one day you understand what it means to truly support family." I left her on read. More relatives started dropping out, and the group chat exploded again. Someone sent a screenshot of a bridesmaid backing out because of the costs. Another cousin said they weren't signing an NDA for any wedding. A few family members were still going, but it was obvious that a lot of people were over it. My mom called again, saying Jake was upset. She asked if I could just go to keep the peace. I told her I had made my decision. She sighed, but didn't push it. Jake hasn't texted me since. I have no idea if he's actually mad or if Emily just told him to ignore me. Either way, I have a bad feeling that this is only the beginning. The morning after I told Jake I wasn't coming to the wedding, I woke up to a missed call from him, then another, and another. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again, this time a long text. He was hurt, disappointed, and asking if I would reconsider. He didn't understand why I was making such a big deal out of it. He said it was just an NDA, and that he and Emily had put so much effort into planning this wedding. He wanted me there. Before I could even think of how to respond, another message popped up. This one was from Emily. It was long and passive-aggressive. She talked about how she'd welcomed me into her life, how she thought I was better than this, and how she never expected me to be the kind of person who abandons family over something so small. She said the NDA was just a formality, that plenty of people signed contracts for events, and that it was unfair that I was making Jake suffer just because I didn't like the rules. She ended it by saying that she was so disappointed, but that she hoped I would rethink my priorities before it's too late. I put my phone down. Before I even had time to process all that, my parents called. My mom sounded tired, like she had been up all night thinking about this. She told me that Jake was really upset and that the wedding was a huge deal for him. My dad wasn't saying much in the background, but I could tell he wasn't thrilled about the drama either. My mom asked me to just sign the NDA and come to the wedding for Jake's sake. I told her I wasn't going. Silence, then a sigh. She didn't argue, but I could hear the disappointment in her voice. By midday, the family group chat had turned into a disaster zone. More people were backing out. A cousin posted a message saying they loved Jake, but they weren't spending thousands of dollars on a trip just to follow a bunch of strict rules. Someone else chimed in, saying they didn't appreciate being told what they could and couldn't post online. One of my aunts, who is usually the peacekeeper, tried to calm everyone down, but it wasn't working. The chat kept blowing up. Then Emily joined in. She sent a long, angry message about how this was supposed to be the happiest time of her and Jake's lives, and how it was disgusting that people were making it about themselves. She accused certain family members, no names, but it was clear she was talking about me, of starting drama and ruining their special moment. She ended it by saying that real family supports each other no matter what. More people left the chat. Jake called again that night. This time, he wasn't just disappointed. He sounded exhausted. He told me that Emily was beyond stressed, and all this drama was only making it worse. He didn't get why I was making this so difficult. He asked if I could just sign the NDA and come. For him, not for Emily. I told him no. The call ended shortly after that. By the next morning, even more guests had dropped out. A cousin sent me a message saying she had privately told Jake she wasn't coming either. Apparently, he didn't take it well. People were backing out left and right, and it was starting to get to him. At that point, I was frustrated, so I did something I don't normally do. I vented on Reddit. I didn't use real names or locations, but I laid out the situation, the expensive wedding, the NDA, the fallout with Jake. I hit post and didn't think much of it. Then it blew up. By that evening, the post had thousands of upvotes. People were commenting non-stop, calling the NDA ridiculous and saying Emily sounded controlling. Some said I should be glad I wasn't going. Others called the whole wedding a cash grab. There were even a few people who shared similar experiences. Weddings with insane demands, Godzillas who pushed family away. Then the private messages started rolling in. A few distant relatives I hadn't talked to in years reached out. Some had seen the post, some had just heard about the drama through the family. They all had the same thing to say. This whole wedding was out of control, and they were glad someone was standing their ground. But Emily wasn't done. That night, she sent another message. This time, she wasn't pretending to be nice. She accused me of always being against her, of never supporting Jake, of trying to tear them apart. She said I had no idea what it was like to plan a wedding of this scale, and that I was being selfish by refusing to just go along with it. I ignored it. Then my mom called again. She told me Jake had stopped responding to her texts. He wasn't talking to her, my dad, or anyone else who had backed out. She sounded worried. Later, one of my uncles, one of the few people who had actually RSVP'd yes, called me. He said I did the right thing, that this whole thing was a mess, and that Jake was probably too deep into it to see how bad it was. Jake still hadn't replied to my last message. I didn't know if this was going to blow over, or if I had just lost my brother over a wedding, but one thing was clear. This was far from over. A few days after things went from bad to worse, more people started dropping out of Jake and Emily's wedding. At first, it was just a few cousins and distant relatives. Then one of Emily's bridesmaids backed out. She had originally agreed to be part of the bridal party but couldn't justify the cost anymore. That seemed to open the floodgates. By the end of the week, the guest list had shrunk dramatically. The family group chat was practically dead, except for the occasional message from my mom, asking people to just do what's best for Jake. A few people still planned to go, but it was clear that the wedding wasn't going to be the grand, over-the-top event Emily had envisioned. Then my mom called again. Jake wasn't doing well. He had stopped talking to a lot of people, including some of our relatives who had always been supportive of him. My mom was worried. She said he seemed stressed and had even mentioned canceling the wedding. I asked if he was serious or if it was just something he said in frustration, but she wasn't sure. Then, later that night, I got a message from a cousin. It was a screenshot of a conversation in a private wedding group chat. Emily was losing it. In the messages, she was going off about how certain people, me, had ruined everything. She was furious that so many guests were dropping out, and even angrier that people weren't taking her wedding seriously. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. If people aren't going to support us, then maybe there's no point in having this wedding at all. I didn't even have time to process that before I got a message from Jake. It was long. He was desperate. He said Emily was rethinking the entire wedding because of how many people were backing out. He begged me to reconsider, saying that if I showed up, it might make other people change their minds too. He said he didn't want to lose more people, that it was tearing Emily apart, and that she was devastated. I asked if she would drop the NDA if that was the issue. I'd come. Silence. A few minutes later, he replied, Emily refused to drop the NDA. That was it for me. I told him my stance hadn't changed. If she wasn't willing to compromise, then neither was I. A few hours later, another cousin sent me more screenshots from the wedding chat. Emily had trashed me again, saying I had always hated her and had never supported Jake's happiness. She even hinted that I was jealous of their relationship. At that point, I couldn't stay silent. I called Jake. I asked if he had seen what Emily was saying about me. He had, and he still defended her. He said she was just venting and that she was under a lot of stress. I told him it wasn't just about me anymore. She was bad-mouthing half the family at this point. He had no response. Then my dad pulled me aside later that night. He told me he thought the whole thing was ridiculous too, but he didn't want to take sides. He just wanted Jake to be happy, even if it meant going along with Emily's insane demands. Meanwhile, Emily was unraveling. At first, she kept up the act, playing it cool, pretending it didn't bother her. But as more guests backed out, the cracks started to show. A cousin who was originally supposed to be one of her bridesmaids told me that Emily had snapped when another guest backed out. At first, she was just venting, but then she got frustrated, accusing people of sabotaging her wedding. What started as a few harsh words turned into a full-on breakdown, crying, pacing, and blaming everyone but herself. She even accused Jake's family of trying to sabotage the wedding. It wasn't just the guests backing out either. The vendors started dropping too. A florist backed out, claiming there were payment issues. Then a caterer allegedly canceled because Emily's family was late on payments. At this point, even the guests who were still planning to go started questioning if this wedding was even happening. Then, in a last-ditch effort, Jake messaged me again. He offered to pay for everything, my flights, my hotel, my entire wedding experience package. He just wanted me there. But the NDA still stood. I refused. He told me I was going to regret this, that this was a once-in-a-lifetime event, and that I'd be missing out on one of the most important days of his life. Then Emily blocked me. I checked Instagram later that night, and I was completely blocked from her account. No mutual friends, no wedding updates, nothing. I wasn't even surprised at that point. The family was still divided. Some people thought I should just suck it up and go for Jake's sake. Others told me I was absolutely doing the right thing. The group chat was dead. My parents were stressed, and Jake was barely talking to anyone. Then the rumor started. A cousin called me, saying they had heard from someone close to Emily that the wedding was either going to be downsized or postponed. They couldn't afford the original plan anymore, and with so many guests backing out, it was no longer the dream wedding Emily wanted. I haven't heard from Jake since. At this point, I have no idea what's going to happen, but if Emily is really reconsidering the wedding, then maybe, just maybe, Jake is starting to see the cracks too. A week after everything started falling apart, a cousin who had backed out of the wedding called me. He had some serious tea. Apparently, at one of Emily's last remaining bridal events, she lost it in front of a few of the bridesmaids. She wasn't just upset, she was furious about the guest list shrinking. She started ranting about how if people didn't want to support their love, then maybe she and Jake should just elope instead. The cousin who overheard it wasn't sure if she was serious or just trying to make a point, but either way, it wasn't a great sign. Then, 2 days later, I got another call, this time from my mom. Jake wasn't doing well. He had a full-on meltdown in front of my parents. He told them he felt trapped. He wanted this wedding to go smoothly, but with so many people backing out, Emily had been putting all the pressure on him. He felt like he was caught in the middle, trying to please her while watching his family pull away. For the first time, my mom admitted she thought Emily was being unreasonable. Up until now, she had been trying to keep the peace, but after seeing Jake like that, she finally saw how much stress this whole situation was putting on him. Then the rumors started flying. One of my aunts, who was still invited, heard from another guest that Emily was thinking about canceling the wedding altogether. Apparently, she had told one of her friends that if enough people weren't going to be there, then it wasn't worth having the wedding at all. It wasn't just guests dropping either. More vendors started bailing. First, the venue had issues with late payments from Emily's family. Then another caterer pulled out. It was like a domino effect. One thing after another kept going wrong. That's when my parents finally decided to step in. My dad sat Jake down and tried to talk to him about the situation. He didn't push too hard, but he made it clear that he was worried about how much control Emily had over everything. My mom, now fully on board with this wedding is a disaster mindset, told Jake that if things were this hard before the marriage even started, maybe he should take a step back and think about what he was getting into. I wasn't involved in that conversation, but I heard about it later, and apparently for the first time, Jake actually listened. Meanwhile, Emily was still trying to salvage what was left. She sent out a massive email to the remaining guests. It was basically a long, dramatic guilt trip about how important this wedding was, and how she and Jake had worked so hard to plan the perfect day. She wrote about how they were so hurt by the people who backed out, and how they hoped that the people who truly cared about them would still show up. I stayed out of it. I wasn't going to argue with her or try to convince Jake of anything. At this point, he had all the information he needed. Then, out of nowhere, Jake called me. It had been a while since we talked, and this time, he sounded different. He told me that, for the first time, he was starting to feel like maybe something was wrong. He didn't say much, but I could tell he was really conflicted. Then the final blow, Emily gave him an ultimatum. She told him that if he couldn't fully commit to her, meaning choosing her over his family, then they needed to rethink everything. Jake didn't respond right away. Instead, he sat with it, thought about everything. Days passed, and for the first time, he started admitting things to himself, how he felt trapped, how he had ignored the warning signs, how Emily's demands had worn him down. And then, finally, he made his decision. He called off the wedding. It wasn't a dramatic moment. There was no big fight, no screaming match. He just walked away. Emily lost her mind. She started publicly trashing Jake and our family. She made vague but obvious social media posts about how she had wasted years on someone who didn't deserve her. She hinted that Jake had betrayed her and that she had been surrounded by toxic people the whole time. Then she moved out. Jake left their shared apartment and went to stay with our parents. He didn't say much, just that he needed time to figure things out. At this point, the wedding that was supposed to be the event of the year was officially dead. No one was talking about the NDA anymore. No one was booking flights or planning outfits. It was over. I still don't know what's next for Jake, but for the first time in years, it feels like I have my brother back. 2 days after Jake called off the wedding, I got a simple text from him. It's officially canceled. That was it. No long explanation, no details, just 3 words. The first thing I did was check social media. Emily hadn't said anything yet, but I knew that wouldn't last long. Sure enough, by the end of the day, she had started posting vague, passive-aggressive messages. Sometimes you think you know someone, and then they show. Their true colors. Toxic people will always try to bring you down when they see you shining. At least I know who was really on my side all along. It didn't take a genius to figure out who she was talking about. The comment section was full of her followers hyping her up, telling her she deserved better, that she was too good for him anyway. A few mutual acquaintances liked the posts, but most people stayed quiet. Meanwhile, my parents, while still technically sad that the wedding didn't happen, were also relieved. My mom finally admitted that she had been worried about how controlling Emily was. My dad, usually the quiet one, just muttered something about how it was never going to work anyway. Then word started spreading that Emily's family was furious. I heard from a cousin that her parents were livid about all the money they had spent on wedding preparations. They had put down deposits, booked vendors, and even started paying for certain exclusive add-ons Emily wanted, and now it was all gone. Then the vendors started demanding final payments. The florist and the caterer, who had already backed out before the wedding even got canceled, were still owed money. Emily's parents had made partial payments, but had been dragging their feet on the final invoices. Now that the wedding was canceled, they were trying to claim that they shouldn't have to pay the remaining balance, but the contract said otherwise. Vendors started sending legal notices, demanding payment. One even threatened to take them to small claims court if they didn't settle their bill. Jake, meanwhile, moved back home. He didn't say much at first, just that he needed some space to figure things out. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days. My parents gave him room to breathe, but I could tell they were happy to have him back. Then, for the first time in years, Jake finally opened up. It started small, a comment here, a passing remark there. Then, one night, he just started talking. He told me how, for the longest time, he had convinced himself that Emily was just strong-willed, that she wasn't controlling, she just knew what she wanted. But the more he talked, the more it became clear, she never really listened to him at all. She planned the wedding without him. He had barely been consulted on the big decisions, where it would be, how long the trip was, who was invited. He hadn't even wanted a destination wedding in Italy. He just went along with it because it was easier than arguing. Then a cousin who was supposed to be in the bridal party spilled some more wedding secrets. Apparently, Emily had made a list of people she didn't want at the wedding, including some of Jake's childhood friends and even a couple of family members. She never told Jake, she just quietly didn't invite them and assumed he wouldn't notice. It was like, with every new thing Jake learned, he saw more and more of the red flags that had been there all along. Then Emily went nuclear. She started telling people that Jake owed her compensation for wasting her time. She told mutual friends that she had spent years building a future with him, and now he was just throwing it all away. She even hinted that he should pay her back for all the money her family had spent on the wedding. Then she started privately messaging some of our relatives. She told them that Jake had betrayed her, that our family had bullied her, and that we had all been against her from the start. But by this point, people weren't buying it. The whole situation had gotten too big. Too many people had seen the real Emily during the wedding drama. That's when my parents, who had always tried to stay neutral, finally took a stand. My mom, who had spent so long trying to get me to sign the NDA, publicly told the family that she fully supported Jake's decision to walk away. My dad even reached out to some of the relatives Emily had tried to turn against us and set the record straight. Jake was still struggling, but he was starting to heal. I convinced him to see a therapist. At first, he wasn't sure, but then he admitted that he needed help processing everything. The moment he agreed, I knew he was actually serious about moving forward. Meanwhile, Emily's friends started turning on her. Some of the bridesmaids who had originally backed her up started distancing themselves. A few of them had lost money because of the wedding too, and once they saw how she was blaming everyone but herself, they started cutting ties. Then Jake did something I hadn't seen him do in years. He started reconnecting with old friends. People he had lost touch with during his relationship with Emily started reaching out. He actually went out for the first time in weeks, just to grab a drink and catch up. It was like watching someone slowly come back to life after being trapped in a fog for years. And the best part? Jake and I actually started spending time together again. We hadn't been close in so long, but now it felt like I finally had my brother back. The wedding had been officially canceled for over a week, but Emily wasn't done, not even close. Her social media became a messy, passive-aggressive disaster. She started posting cryptic captions about being stabbed in the back and learning who truly supported you. One post was just a selfie with the caption, "Some people never deserved you to begin with." Another was a long paragraph about watching people you love betray you and realizing they were never really on your side. She never mentioned Jake's name, but everyone knew exactly who she was talking about. Then she started calling him. At first, Jake ignored it. He didn't want to deal with her anymore, but she kept trying. Late-night calls, missed FaceTime requests, voicemails that just sounded like forced crying. Then she sent him an email. She wrote about how she was willing to work things out, but only if he apologized and distanced himself from his family. She made it clear that I was a major issue. She blamed me for ruining things and insisted that if Jake ever wanted a future with her, he needed to cut off the people who poisoned their relationship. That was the final straw. Jake blocked her on everything. No hesitation this time, no second guessing. He went through his phone and made sure she had no way to contact him again. Then we started hearing rumors. Apparently, Emily was considering suing Jake for emotional distress. A cousin heard from someone in Emily's circle that she had been talking about legal action. She was claiming that Jake had blindsided her by canceling the wedding, and that she deserved compensation for the pain and embarrassment he caused her. It didn't go anywhere, but the fact that she was even thinking about it was insane. Meanwhile, mutual friends started taking sides. At first, some of them had tried to stay neutral, but once Jake finally opened up about everything that had happened, the NDA, the insane costs, the way Emily treated him, people started unfollowing her. A few even reached out to say they had no idea how bad it had gotten. Then Emily's family tried to drag my parents into it. Apparently, they expected Jake's family to cover part of the wedding expenses since it was his fault the wedding got canceled. My parents laughed that off immediately. They weren't paying a dime for a wedding that never even happened. Then came the fight over the engagement ring. Jake asked for it back. Emily refused. She claimed it was a gift and that she had every right to keep it. That's when Jake finally decided to consult a lawyer. He wasn't even sure if he wanted the ring back. He just didn't want her to keep it out of spite. The lawyer told him it depended on whether it was considered a gift or a conditional agreement. Basically, if it was given with the expectation of marriage, then legally, Jake might have a right to get it back. But if it was considered an unconditional gift, Emily could keep it. No official legal action was taken, but the fact that Jake even had to consider getting a lawyer for this was ridiculous. Then Emily sunk even lower. She started DMing members of our family. She told them Jake was weak, that he had let his family control him, that he had never really loved her. She was trying to turn people against him, but by this point, almost everyone knew the truth. Then a cousin leaked screenshots from the wedding group chat. The messages were bad. Emily had called Jake pathetic for listening to his family. She had mocked him for needing his mommy and daddy's approval. She had even joked about how she was only marrying him because he would do whatever she wanted. When Jake saw the messages, he didn't say anything. He just stared at the screen for a long time. For the first time, he looked like he truly understood who he had been engaged to. But even after everything, he still struggled with guilt. He started wondering if he should have handled things differently. If he had stood up for himself sooner, maybe it wouldn't have gotten this bad. Maybe he wouldn't have let it get this far. But then something changed. People started unfollowing Emily in droves. She lost a ton of social media followers. The vague posts, the passive-aggressive comments, the constant victim act. People were over it. Mutual friends stopped responding to her. Bridesmaids who had once backed her up were now completely ignoring her. Then one night, Jake told me something I never expected to hear. I feel relieved. After weeks of chaos, he finally realized that he had dodged a bullet. Emily's final move was her most dramatic yet. She posted a long, unhinged rant about how some people will let their families sabotage true love because they're too weak to think for themselves. She disabled comments so no one could call her out. Then, the next day, she deleted it. That was the last thing she ever posted about Jake. About a month after the wedding was officially canceled, Emily went completely silent. No cryptic posts, no dramatic rants, nothing. For someone who had been airing her grievances nonstop, it was weird. Then, one day, a cousin sent me a screenshot from Instagram. Emily had moved on, fast. She had posted a new picture, a fancy dinner, candlelight, a caption about finding happiness after heartbreak, and sitting across from her, a new guy. Jake saw it too. He didn't say much, just kind of stared at the screen for a moment. He admitted it felt weird, but for the first time in forever, he wasn't angry. He just shrugged and said, "At least I don't have to deal with her anymore." But Emily wasn't done rewriting the narrative. Her posts started shifting. Suddenly, she wasn't the heartbroken victim anymore. She was thriving. She was talking about real love, new beginnings, and escaping toxic relationships. It was clear what she was trying to do, flip the story. Then someone in the family recognized the guy. He wasn't just some random rebound, he was one of Jake's old co-workers, someone Emily had met before while she and Jake were still together. And just like that, the theory started flying. Had she already been talking to this guy before the wedding was called off? Had she lined up her next relationship before Jake even left? The timeline wasn't adding up and people started putting the pieces together. Then Jake admitted something. The last few months with Emily, she had been acting distant. There were nights where she'd suddenly be busy, where she wouldn't text back for hours. He'd brushed it off as wedding stress, but now he wasn't so sure. A few days later, I got a message from an unexpected source, one of Emily's ex-bridesmaids. She had stopped talking to Emily after all the wedding drama, and now that everything had settled, she wanted to share something. Apparently, Emily had been talking to the new guy months before the wedding. It wasn't physical, as far as she knew, but Emily had been texting him a lot. She had even mentioned how she felt a connection with him but brushed it off because she was about to get married. Jake took it surprisingly well. After sitting with it for a while, he just let out a deep breath and said, "You know what? I don't even care anymore." For the first time, he felt free. No more doubts, no more wondering if he should have handled things differently. He finally understood. Emily was never truly loyal. She was always looking for something better. Then, 3 months after what was supposed to be their wedding day, Emily dropped the biggest bombshell yet. She announced her engagement to the same guy. Looking back, though, the signs had been there. She had been distant toward the end of her relationship with Jake. always busy, texting someone late at night, disappearing for hours at a time. At the time, Jake had brushed it off as wedding stress. Now it was clear she had already been checked out before the wedding was even called off. People lost their minds. The same followers who had sympathized with her breakup posts started questioning the timeline. Comments were filled with people asking how she had gone from heartbreak to engagement so fast. Jake saw the post, and for the first time in this entire mess, he laughed. A real, genuine laugh. He wasn't bitter, he wasn't angry, he just found it hilarious. The best part? By then, he had started rebuilding his life. He had moved out of our parents' house and into his own place. He was going out with friends again. He had even gotten a promotion at work, something that never would have happened if he had still been stuck in wedding planning chaos with Emily. Therapy was paying off too. He had stopped blaming himself for everything. He understood now that it wasn't about him not being enough. Emily was always going to be like this. She just wanted control. Then, just when we thought she was finally gone for good, Emily reached out one last time. She sent Jake a long message claiming he never deserved her, that she had found a real man, and that he would never be happy without her. Jake didn't even respond. He laughed, blocked her, and moved on for good. It's been a year since Jake called off the wedding, and honestly, I've never seen him doing this well. He's in a new relationship now, and this time, it's actually healthy. No weird ultimatums, no controlling behavior, no endless drama. His girlfriend is kind, supportive, and, most importantly, she treats him like an equal. From what I've seen, they actually talk things out, make decisions together, and, get this, she encourages him to have a life outside of their relationship. Basically, the exact opposite of Emily. Meanwhile, Emily's whirlwind engagement, it imploded. I found out through mutual friends that she and her new fiancé didn't even make it 6 months. No fancy wedding, no over-the-top destination event, just a messy breakup. And the best part? Her ex spoke out. One of my cousins, who still follows Emily's former bridesmaids, told me that the guy finally realized who he was dealing with. According to what he told his friends, Emily was sweet and fun at first, but the moment things got serious, she turned into a completely different person. She demanded control over everything. She made strict rules about what he could and couldn't post online. She expected him to pay for everything while constantly complaining that he wasn't doing enough. It didn't take long for him to see the red flags, and once he called her out on her behavior, she lost it. The breakup wasn't pretty. He left her, and Emily tried everything to keep him, but unlike Jake, he wasn't as easily manipulated. Once he was done, he was done. Then, out of nowhere, Emily tried to come back. Jake woke up one morning to a long message from an unknown number. It was Emily. He didn't even read it. He saw her name, sighed, deleted it, then blocked the number. That was it. No curiosity, no second thoughts. He was finally over it. Meanwhile, Jake's career has skyrocketed. Without Emily holding him back, he's been killing it at work. He got a promotion 6 months ago, and his boss has already hinted that he's in line for an even bigger role soon. Turns out, when you're not being drained by constant drama, you actually have time to focus on things that matter. And my parents? They finally admitted that they should have spoken up sooner. They told Jake they were sorry for not saying anything when they saw how controlling Emily was. At the time, they just wanted to support him, but looking back, they realized they should have warned him. Now they're just happy to have their son back. As for Emily, her fake influencer persona is starting to crumble. People see through her now. She still posts about self-growth and thriving after heartbreak, but the engagement scandal definitely hurt her reputation. A lot of her old followers unfollowed her after seeing how quickly she moved on and how fast it all fell apart. Every once in a while, someone will send me screenshots of her random posts that seem clearly aimed at Jake. The most recent one? Some people never change. Glad I dodged that bullet. Sure, Emily, whatever helps you sleep at night. Meanwhile, in our family, the whole thing has basically turned into a running joke. Whenever we see something expensive or over the top, someone will say, "Hey, should we make it a mandatory wedding experience package?" Or if anyone starts over-explaining something, we'll say, "Sign the NDA first." Even Jake laughs about it now. A few months ago, we took a sibling trip together, just the two of us. The first time in years we actually hung out like that. No tension, no Emily drama, just us being brothers again. And honestly, that's the best part of all of this. Emily tried to break Jake. She tried to isolate him, control him, and make him feel like he needed her. But in the end, she's the one who lost. Jake got his life back. He got his family back. And now he's happier than he's ever been. Sometimes dodging a wedding invite is the best decision you'll ever make. 3 months after Emily's whirlwind engagement collapsed, she started reinventing herself. Her social media was suddenly filled with posts about self-growth and escaping toxicity. She branded herself as a self-love influencer, constantly talking about how she had healed from the past and learned to thrive alone. The irony? She was clearly still bitter. Every few weeks she'd drop a not-so-subtle jab about people who let their families ruin their lives or weak men who can't think for themselves. The captions were different, but the message was always the same. She was still obsessed with Jake. Then, out of nowhere, Jake got an email. It was from Emily. It was long and dramatic. She claimed she had matured and wanted to have a real conversation to clear the air. She said she had moved on but wanted closure so they could both heal properly. Jake showed me the email, and we both just stared at the screen. At this point, everyone told him to ignore it. My parents, mutual friends, even Jake's girlfriend said it wasn't worth it. But I could tell there was a part of him that was curious, not because he wanted to get back in touch, that ship had sailed, but because he wanted to know what her angle was. Then, a mutual friend dropped some major tea. Apparently, Emily's influencer career had taken a major hit. The wedding fallout had hurt her reputation. Brands were wary of working with someone who had been publicly tied to such a messy situation. Sponsorship deals slowed down, and with all the money she and her family had poured into the wedding, she was struggling to keep up her lifestyle. The wedding vendors she and her family had stiffed? Some of them were still trying to take legal action. Her social media presence was shrinking fast. The engagement fallout had ruined her credibility. People didn't trust her anymore. Brands had stopped reaching out, and her sponsored posts had dried up. She wasn't just looking for closure, she was looking for a lifeline. Then we found out her real plan. One of my cousins, who still had mutual friends with Emily, did some digging. Turns out, Emily was trying to launch a podcast about overcoming heartbreak and moving forward after betrayal. And she wanted Jake to be part of it. She wasn't reaching out to heal, she was trying to use him for content. Jake finally read the email in full, and it was exactly what we expected: manipulative, vague, and full of guilt-tripping language. It wasn't a real apology, it was her trying to rewrite the story again, this time with her in control of the narrative. Jake didn't respond. He didn't tell her off, he didn't argue, he didn't give her the attention she desperately wanted. He just let her stew in silence. Then Emily did what she always does when she doesn't get her way. She had a meltdown online. She posted a long, dramatic rant about how some people can't handle the truth and are too weak to face their past mistakes. It stayed up for a few hours before she deleted it, but by then, enough people had seen it, and the general reaction? No one cared anymore. People were tired of her drama. And then we heard the final piece of karma. Emily had to move back in with her parents. Her financial troubles had finally caught up with her, and without the influence or income she had relied on, she couldn't keep up with her lifestyle. Meanwhile, Jake's life? The complete opposite. He was thriving. He and his girlfriend were planning a big vacation together, something he never would have been able to do if he had married Emily. His job was going better than ever, and for the first time in years, he actually felt like his own person. Emily, however, was still trying to stir the pot. She started reaching out to mutual friends, hoping someone would convince Jake to talk to her. Nobody took the bait. Then, the ultimate irony, one of the cousins who leaked Emily's wedding group chat rants got invited to an event where Emily was. Instead of confronting them, Emily pretended they had never met, just acted like none of it had ever happened. At this point, Jake finally admitted he didn't feel any anger toward her anymore, just relief. He dodged a bullet, and now he was finally free. Looking back, it's crazy to think that this all started with a ridiculous wedding invitation. But in the end, it turned into something much bigger. Something that saved Jake from the worst decision of his life. A few nights ago, we were all at a family gathering, and someone made a joke about the wedding that never was. Jake just raised his glass and said, "Best thing that ever happened to me." And honestly, he's right.